The first larva is already moving. It slides along a glowing marrow thread stretched between two curved bones, its soft body trembling like a bead pulled through wet light. The thread tightens. The bone loop above it flexes inward. Another larva follows behind, smaller, dimmer, not yet hardened enough to leave the loom. Behind them, the mother stands still. She is tall, faceless, and almost motionless inside a cage made from her own external bones. The bones rise around her body in long pale arcs, curving outward like spindles, then bending back toward her torso. Between them stretch luminous marrow threads, pulled tight through holes in the bone. The entire structure looks like a birth machine built from skeleton and tension. She does not give birth, she weaves. The hanging tendon gallery around her is vertical and silent. Pale cords descend from above. Cold overhead light strikes the bone spindles and throws long shadows across the wet floor. Dust drifts through the light, but the background never becomes the story. The story is the mother, the bone loom, the marrow threads, and the larvae sliding through them. Another thread tightens. The mother does not lift an arm. She has no face to strain, no mouth to open, no eyes to follow the young. Her external bones do the movement for her. A spindle pulls inward, stretching the glowing marrow strand until 3 larvae move forward at once. They pass through a circular hole in the bone, one after another, each body narrowing as it enters the loop, then swelling slightly after it comes through. This is the species rule. Every larva must pass through every external bone loop before detaching. The loops are not obstacles, they are developmental gates. Each pass compresses the larva, hardens one layer of its body, and teaches its tissues to hold shape. A larva that skips a loop remains soft. It may look alive, it may move, but it cannot survive outside the loom. The mother's cage flexes again. The sound is not a crack. It is a low tightening, like living bone remembering pressure. Marrow threads brighten from within. The larvae slide faster now, carried by tension rather than crawling. They do not choose their path. The mother's external skeleton pulls the root through them. One larva approaches the next loop too high. It misses the bone opening. For a second, it hangs between two threads, soft and bright, its body unshaped by the passage it should have taken. The thread below it tightens dangerously. The larva bends around the outside of the loop instead of passing through it. The mother remains still, but the entire bone cage reacts. 3 spindles rotate inward. The missed loop opens wider. A nearby marrow thread loosens, then pulls sharply sideways. The larva is drawn backward, not with violence, but with ritual precision. It is returned to the opening it missed. Its soft body folds, enters the bone hole and passes through. When it emerges, its surface is dimmer, firmer, less fluid. The loom has corrected it. The mother's body never moved. The external bones are her hands. The marrow is her womb. The gallery deepens behind her. More hanging tendon cords sway in the cold light. Shadows of the bone loom climb the walls and floor, making the mother look taller than she is, but her true size is not height. It is the structure around her, a living architecture built to finish young outside the body. The larvae now move in rows. Some pass through lower loops, glowing faintly. Others climb angled threads toward higher bone spindles. A few are almost hardened, their bodies no longer bending freely as they slide. They click softly against the inner edges of the bone holes. Each click means another layer has set. The mother tightens the upper cage. Marrow threads stretch thinner. The light inside them becomes sharper. The larvae slow. Too little tension leaves them soft. Too much tension can snap the thread and strand them between loops. The entire ritual depends on balance. A thread begins to fray. The glowing line splits into 2 wet strands near the center of the loom. Larvae on that thread stop moving. One hardening young hangs halfway through a bone loop, unable to pass forward or return. The mother's external ribs pull inward, the surrounding bones change shape, redistributing tension across nearby threads. A second strand takes the weight. The frayed thread dims, but does not break. The trapped larva moves again. It passes through the bone loop with a slow twist, and its body hardens along the side that touched marrow light. The mother's cage relaxes slightly. The gallery shadows settle. There is no blood, there is no nest, there is no hidden womb. Only external bone, living marrow tension, and young bodies being woven into survival. The final row of larvae reaches the outermost loops. These are the detachment gates. The bones here are darker, older, polished by previous broods. A larva passing through this last opening changes visibly. Its glow withdraws from the thread and settles inside its own body. Its surface becomes opaque. Its soft underside stiffens into independent support. It no longer slides like a bead. It grips the thread once, then releases. The first hardened young detaches. It does not fall. It lowers itself from the marrow strand, still connected by a thin glow at its back. The mother's nearest bone spindle opens just enough for it to pass beyond the cage. When the glow snaps free, the young holds its shape, another follows, then another. Each detachment leaves the thread emptier and dimmer. The mother remains upright inside the loom, but her external bones begin to loosen. The cage that looked sacred and permanent is temporary. It exists at full tension only during the weaving cycle. Once the young are hardened, the bones can fold closer to the mother's body and rest. Sewn larva remains. It is small, late and still soft. It has passed every loop except one. The missed opening is high on the left side of the cage, hidden behind a shadowed bone spindle. If it detaches now, it will not survive. The thread beneath it tightens. The larva trembles. The hardened young outside the loom remain still, their new bodies glowing faintly in the cold light. The mother's cage flexes one final time. Every external bone pulls inward at once. The high loop turns toward the larva. A marrow thread stretches across the mother's front, bright enough to reveal her faceless surface through the glowing strands. The late larva is pulled upward, through the missing loop, and back down along the final thread. Its body compresses, then hardens. The ritual completes. The last young detaches quietly. Now the loom is empty. The glowing marrow threads hang slack between the external bones. Bone spindles open wider. No longer pulling, the mother stands inside her own cage, unchanged on the outside but visibly reduced in light. The threads that held the larvae now carry only dim pulses, fading one by one. The camera holds on a single empty marrow thread. It still trembles from the last passage. Behind it, the faceless mother lowers her external bones around herself. The hanging tendon gallery stays silent. The cold overhead light catches the empty loops where the young once passed. She did not give birth from a hidden body, she made survival by tension. She pulled her young through bone until they became strong enough to leave her. In the final image, the hardened young stand beyond the loom, small and still beneath suspended cords. The mother remains inside the opened cage of external bones. One marrow thread glows faintly between them, then goes dark. The womb was missing, the young were woven.